an advice for my fellow Venezuelans regarding the future. So today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
So today I'm gonna give my honest advice about the future of Venezuela, and that goes for my fellow Venezuelans. And if you're international and you want to stick around for a while, please do so. However, the things that I'm going to say today are going mostly to my fellow Venezuelans. And right now, if you're a Venezuelan watching this, most of us, because I have to include myself, we have lived very difficult times, difficult years. Trust me, I've been here in the country throughout thick and thin. I also enjoy the good days of Venezuela, and well, I'm not as old, so I could enjoy the 70s and the 80s. Regarding my economic analysis and research about the 70s and the 80s, those were great years, excellent years to be a Venezuelan. In case you don't know, during the 70s and the 80s, Venezuela was a top 10 country regarding GDP per capita, and we had a lot of supply of goods and services and different luxuries that the average Venezuelan thought that it was normal, but actually those were luxuries for worldwide standards, even compared to the quote-unquote rich countries. That happened, and let me explain a little bit why that happened. Most of you, especially the older ones, doesn't know this, but during the 70s, Venezuela was known as the Saudi Venezuela. Of course, the crude oil, and Venezuela was and still part of OPEC, this particular institution regarding the oil industry worldwide, that most of the OPEC members are Middle Eastern nations like Saudi Arabia, that actually both Venezuela and Saudi Arabia founded OPEC, and a couple of others. And you have Qatar, Kuwait, and all of the Middle Eastern big producers. Well, what happened in the 70s is that we had a war in the Middle East, 2010. And we had on the 73, we had the Yom Kippur War. That was Israel against their Middle Eastern neighbors. And Israel pretty much won that particular war. It was a quick war. And of course, Middle Eastern nations back then were pissed off for the outcome of this particular war. And of course, most of the Western nations supported Israel. So in a way, in order to punish the support of Israel by Western nations, the OPEC nations put an oil embargo to the Western nations, and we had an energy crisis during the 70s. And back then, Venezuela was one of the few oil suppliers, reliable oil suppliers in the world, and Venezuela pretty much became rich. Back then, the oil prices just sky jumped, like 3x, 4x during the rest of the decade. And that became, that created a lot of oil revenue for the country. Back then was the Fourth Republic. That's, in case you're an international, this is a particular period of 40 years that came after the military dictatorship that we had in the 50s and just before Hugo Chavez arrived to the country. Very good. So what happened is, back then, Venezuela was rich, very rich. The standards of living were great. A lot of, and socialism actually, a lot of public subsidies and housing and public education and public healthcare. We still have it on a way lesser degree, but we still have it, by the way. But the standards of living for the average Venezuelan were great. The opportunities were great. We had flights to Miami every weekend, flights to Margarita Island, like 50 per hour or something like that. I mean, you can go to either, if you were poor back then in Venezuela in the 70s, I'm sorry, you can go every weekend to Margarita Island. If you were poor, and if you were middle class, you can go to Miami every weekend. Imagine, those were great times. Funny thing, I was speaking to my mom, and I was explaining, Mom, what happened? I mean, I wasn't born back then, so Mom, what happened? Did you enjoy those particular times? No, son, I couldn't enjoy it because I was in college, working hard. She's a doctor, and of course, she had to study very hard. So She missed the party. Well, sad for her. Now, the thing is about this particular situation is that the Venezuelan politicians back then became very populist. We had, of course, if you're Venezuelan, you know this particular gentleman, Carlos Andrés Pérez, and he was a very populist politician, by the way. If you are an Adeco, you don't like it, but it is what it is. And all of the politicians in Venezuela became very populist back then. The issue is that implemented a particular economic model that basically, when the oil prices became, more stable on the 80s, that created economical hardship, not compared to anything like we have right now, by the way. But the standards of living were excellent and dropped significantly, and people start getting, pissed off. Both with both sides of the aisle back then, the Adecos and the Copellans. Anyway, and of course, in the 90s, we had a bunch of turmoil and Chavez. I'm not going to get into Chavez for now. Well, the issue is that on a lesser degree, we had good standards of living, even with the Chavismo, until the early 2010s, and then it was horrendous. What happened, we remember everything that happened regarding the scarcity, the failure of the public services. We still have it, but let's be honest, it's not as bad as it was, years ago. And also the free gasoline, we always had that. And I mean, in Venezuela, going with the intangibles, Venezuela is a very cool country to be. I mean, it's fun to share, those experiences. And this goes for my fellow Venezuelans, is that many of the experiences that we had, I mean, when we were in college or we were young, and also mingling with, our cousins or our friends or our neighbors, going with the beach, and the way that we did it, and we still do it on a lesser degree, as Venezuelans, this is something that for us is very natural, is basically everyday's business as usual, but in the rest of the world, it's not like that. And internationals cherish that particular lifestyle that we, as average Venezuelans, I mean, you don't have to be rich or anything in order to access, back then, just until last decade, in order to access that particular lifestyle, is very appealing for internationals because most of them didn't have that opportunity. And that's one of the things that make Venezuela special. And trust me, this is something that is intangible and sounds just like a little thing, but is valuable. It's one of the major things that is going to help you recover the country in years to come and decades to come. Now, if you're listening to this, and of course, let's say you are in your 40s or your 30s or your 50s, and let's say you are in your early 20s if you're younger, we, a lesser degree if you're younger, but we had this particular mindset in Venezuela before the crisis that if we do everything right, go to college and get a good degree and do everything right, we are going to be entitled to a good life with good standards of living. And that's not the case. If you're Venezuelan, you know that. I mean, being a white-collar professional in Venezuela is pretty much useless. So I know that if you're an average Venezuelan, most of you, I mean, we have endured a difficult crisis, and you think that, I mean, this country has been ungrateful to us, and until a certain degree, that is the case. And you think you're going to have a better opportunity abroad, and that's where the issue comes, because most likely it won't be the case. The issue is that abroad, especially if you migrated to another Latin American nation, let's say if you are in Peru, please, if you're watching this from Peru, please let me hug you. I know you have been through a lot, but the rest of the world is not way better than Venezuela. Trust me, I travel a lot, and back when I was able to do so, and I know that the rest of the world is not way better than Venezuela. It can look better than Venezuela. And on 2017, Peru looked like Dubai for us Venezuelans, but trust me, Peru ain't no Dubai. And you feel a lot of frustration, especially that impotence, that powerless feeling that you have, especially because the people responsible for this crisis, well, not 100% responsible, but like 60, 70%, you cannot do anything about it. Those are the politicians on both sides of the aisle, of course. We have the bigger one to blame, and I'm not going to get into politics right now. But even with them, we can make something happen because our future depends on us, not depends on politicians. And that's one of the major mistakes that we made as Venezuelans. We thought that politicians were the ones that they're going to solve our problems, and it's not the case. They are going to solve their problems. That goes from both sides of the aisle. With many people voted for Hugo Chavez, and right now these people are voting for Maria Corina, by the way. Funny thing though. Meanwhile, other people, they believe that Juan Guaido was the one that is going to solve our problems, and that's not the case. Same thing with Capriles and with all of these BS politicians from the quote-unquote opposition. And by the way, I have nothing against Maria Corina, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to wait for Maria Corina to solve my problems because I am the only one that is going to solve my problems. So, for my fellow Venezuelans, how the future will look like in Venezuela. It's going to be better. It's going to be way better if we have patience. I'm talking the next 10 years or something, and of course, I cannot sit down here and tell you, wait 10 years, because it's not the case. You have to work on yourself. In the meantime, but meanwhile, the rest of the world is not going to be better because right now, and trust me, that comes from a specialist on macroeconomics, the rest of the world is not going to be better. Let's start by the US. They have a bunch of macroeconomic issues that are going to explode. And it's going to be spectacular. And sorry if you're listening this from the United States, regardless if you are a Venezuelan or an American citizen. But the US has a lot of economic problems that we are not seeing the results yet. Still, we are seeing the inflation and the decrease of standards of living for the average over there. And I know the US right now looks way better than Venezuela, but believe me, it's not as better as most people think. And by the way, if you're over there and you love it, please stay over there and you have a decent standard of living over there. I wish you the best. If you're planning to go to the US and you want to take a shot over there, still wish you the best. And same thing goes for the rest of Venezuelans going to another country like Spain. Spain. The main point is that many problems that you think you're going to solve going abroad most likely won't be the case. You have opportunities that you don't have here in Venezuela, and that's a guarantee. However, most people all over the world, I'm talking all over the world, including the quote-unquote rich nations, most of them are barely making ends meet, having better opportunities that we had, especially in the past decade, and also not only have the economic issues, they have social issues that we don't have, like the world culture and the LGBTQ or whatever, I don't remember. We don't have those issues in Venezuela. You know that, by the way, if you are Venezuelan. Or we don't have this social turmoil. We don't have mass shootings. In Venezuela, let's be honest, we don't have mass shootings. It's not the safest place in the world, but we don't have random acts of violence in a shopping mall or something like that. We have a pretty much healthy culture here in Venezuela, putting aside the economics. We are friends of each other. We have good family network. We have good friends. We have people, and people are valuable. And that people that you take for granted, if you are in Venezuela, you're going to lose it. And they're not going to be over there. I'm talking your parents, your siblings, your friends from high school. Those are the ones that are going to be in another country. So what I'm saying, the bottom line is that probably what you're looking for elsewhere, and by the way, I'm saying this, I have to be very responsible. If you have opportunities, you have a proven, bona fide opportunity abroad, please take it and kick some ass, and I wish you the best. And also, if you just want to take a shot because you're a particular professional that has a particular demand on a particular country, please go and do your best, and please do it. The rest of Venezuelans are going to be supporting you and rooting for you. I'm going to be rooting for you. Trust me. If you're abroad, listen to this. I'm rooting for you. I'm wishing you the best. I hope you have the best life possible. If you're in Venezuela and you're within Venezuela still, I wish you the best as well. But you have to do what we call in economics a marginal analysis. Because I know that when you are struggling here in Venezuela, and most people are, and believe me, I see these things, these cases every day. So I manage this particular, data and information and analysis, and I see a lot of economic hardships for most Venezuelans, and I cannot escape some of those particular situations. But what I recommend is doing a good marginal analysis of your particular situation. You have a lot of things going on within the country that you don't realize it, that you have it until you leave and it's already too late. Also, the rest of the countries are not way better. But trust me, I've been there. I've been in the United States, I've been in Europe, I've been in other parts in Latin America. They are not way better than we are. Believe me, the gap between Venezuela and the rest of Latin America is narrow, actually. You can have a better job being an employee, but afterwards, not pretty much nothing more. And also, you have more easing of doing, let's say, a very tiny business here in Venezuela compared to those countries. So I'm going to sum it up for you, fellow Venezuelan watching this. First, if you want to migrate to the country, first, do it. But do it for the right reasons, not because it's a trend, because you know that Venezuelans are show off and they like to pretend something that they're not. Most of the Venezuelans abroad that you see on the US and Miami or Europe, and you see the fun pictures on Instagram and the cool pictures, thinking that they have great standards of living. They don't, by the way. Most of them, not all, but most of them. So take that into account. And Venezuela is a cool place to be. That's the first thing. Second, if you're already abroad, please make your best over there. If you are doing great over there, abroad in Venezuela, what you think is doing great over there, please keep doing so. Stay over there, and I wish you the best. But if you know that you're struggling and you're not going to make anything over there, I mean, it's up to you. Which decision do you have? If you go to a third country or you come back to Venezuela, if you come back, you're going to be welcomed by many people that cherish your particular presence. Also, other thing, if you are a younger Venezuelan, trust me, there are opportunities going to be for the future, not for right now. So you need to develop skills and become the best professional, or let's say worker or entrepreneur, whatever may be the case, your particular case. Let's say you're a musician, be the best musician as you can, or whatever may be the case. There are going to be opportunities. They're going to be, but you have to look very hard for those opportunities. They're not going to come to you. We have a lot of hardships, but we still have a handful of opportunities depending on your particular situation that you might be able to achieve. So you have to be patient, and you have to look besides your particular bubble and cohort of people and socioeconomic status. Because one of the biggest mistakes that we make as Venezuelans is that we like to show off, and also we like to follow trends. And that's one of the reasons that we are in this particular dire situation. This is something that I want to change. We have to be better as Venezuelans. And lastly, I'm not saying what is going to happen. I'm not a fortune teller. I'm not Nostradamus. But Venezuela, I am almost certain that it's going to be better on the next 10 years. Now, it's not, if you are old, it's not going to be like the Fourth Republic. Those days are gone and those days are dead, and you have to deal with that, especially the older ones. It's not going to be like the United States, when the United States was cool. Actually, by the way, still is, but on a lesser degree, and is trending down. It's not going to be like the US, by the way, when Venezuela is quote-unquote better. And it's not going to be what you think it's going to be. It's not like we're going to have handouts from the government, or it's like you're going to receive free money or anything like that. No, what is going to happen is that we're going to have more supply of goods and services. We're going to have more demand for other products and services. And that's where you have the opportunity. If you can provide such goods and services with certain quality at a certain price, that's the opportunity, depending on who you are or what you're good or your particular industry. So I recommend you, fellow Venezuelan, please be a little bit more positive for the future, and don't take for granted that the rest of the world is better, because trust me, it isn't.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.